Welcome to Strategy Next, the podcast where bold ideas and visionary strategies shape the future of business. Brought to you by J. Helmy and Company, we unlock insights from trailblazing leaders and innovators, redefining what's possible. From scaling startups to transforming global enterprises, Strategy Next is your guide to staying ahead, innovating boldly, and leading with purpose. The future doesn't wait. Let's discover what's next together.
Hello and welcome to Strategy Next. I'm Jon Lobb, your host, and today we have with us a very special guest. Mr. Thomas Vozzo is an author, speaker, and Fortune 200 executive turned nonprofit CEO at Homeboy Industries, the world's largest and most successful gang rehabilitation and reentry organization in the world. Homeboy was awarded with the 2020 Conrad N. Hilton Humanitarian Prize, the world's largest humanitarian prize presented to a nonprofit. Tom, it's wonderful to have you with us today. Thank you so much.
Oh, great, John. Good to be with you. Looking forward to our discussion.
Me too. And I think our audience will be especially intrigued. So let me ask you, you spent 30 years in corporate America. You were at the top. You were a Fortune 200 CEO. And you get through 30 years, and a lot of guys would be thinking about hitting the golf links. What inspired you to take the path that you did?
Yeah, well, interesting question. So I did hit the golf links, and then 6 months into it, I realized I missed being around people. And I got to do something, or I wanted to do something. Mm-hmm. And really, let me say, Homeboy Industries we're a nonprofit organization. We help men and women leave gang life behind. So when people come out of prison or jail, they don't want to go back to the gang. They want to find something else, and they voluntarily come through our doors, and we help them. And we help them leave gang life for sure, life of crime. And so how did I get involved? A friend of mine who I was on the board of Salvation Army of Los Angeles with for a number of years, he knew I had left the corporate world and had retired and had time on my hands. And so he invited me down to the Homegirl Cafe to have lunch. And I still remember this like it was yesterday, although it was over 12 years ago. And I'm sitting there having lunch with my friend, and I'm a big believer in businesses. Well-run businesses are good for our society. And I'm looking around as I'm having lunch, and I'm looking at the workers there, and they're interacting with customers, they're smiling, they're talking to the supervisor like normal workers. And I'm also realizing that in my for-profit world, I would have never hired any of them because they had tattoos on their face, they had felonies, and they were gang members. And so what sort of was challenging to me was thinking like I knew everything about business and workforces, and yet here's this whole population that I didn't do anything about. And so when my friend asked me to get involved, I've done enough board work. I wanted to see if I could roll up my sleeves and put my business skills to use in a different way. And so I started volunteering. And then, 12 years later, I'm still there. Still here.
Fantastic. And from what I know, you have duplicated your track record of success at Homeboy. Sounds like you have made a lot happen, a lot of good happen there.
Yeah, well, it's like from the normal sort of way of talking about businesses, we're now over 3 times the size of when I first started. So 3 times the impact. Helping out 10,000 people every year who come through our doors in some type of way. But, I know it sounds cliche to say this, but yes, I feel like I've given back and helped the organization grow, but I've gotten a lot out of it for myself. And just being in this community of people who have been forgotten and traumatized and demonized, and how they are able to move their life forward has helped me find better balance in my life as well.
I'll bet. I'm reminded of a high school teacher of mine who one day our class was acting up, right? Being high school kids and not paying attention. And he told us about his experience as a teacher in prison and how when you're a teacher in prison, it's not mandatory. He said every guy in his class wanted to be there. They wanted to get their GED. They wanted to do better. Even those with a life sentence who probably wouldn't get out, probably wouldn't parole out, were interested. And he said, you guys, well, you kind of have to be here, but think about that. Think about people who are hungry for an education. And so, of course, that shut us up for about 5 minutes. We felt bad. And then we were back to being high schoolers. But it sounds like people that you're working with, nobody else is inclined necessarily to give them a break.
No, that's right. And in many ways, I wrote this book, The Homeboy Way, as a description, thinking back, if I was ever to go back into the for-profit, what lessons would I bring back to me of working with gang members? And that's sort of how I started writing the book. And then it became more that plus how to help people who are poor in our society. But to the point of your story, listen, these gang members are second and third generation gang members. Their mother was in the gang, their uncle was in the gang. They got jumped in at a young age. They didn't finish high school. And so it's almost predestined they're going to be a gang member and do something bad and go to prison. But they're tired of that lifestyle. They don't want to do that, right? And so then when you offer them help, and here's one of the lessons, like we're all human. If you offer people kinship and compassion and resources and love, people will change. And it's really so true. And so it's about understanding that this is not only a good workforce for other businesses they should hire, but just leaning in and being in a relationship with them is a mutuality where it makes a difference on both people's lives.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned about possibly bringing lessons that you've learned from the gang members back to corporate America. Our audience is probably out there now in corporate America. Do you have any specific examples you could share about things you've learned working with, what we'll say, the worst of the worst that they could apply in their daily lives?
Yeah, sure. And let me kind of tell you a story along the way, which sort of highlights one or two of those lessons. At Homeboy, we have social enterprise businesses, and we have a bakery and a cafe and a silkscreen and electronic recycling business. But one of our businesses, as I said, a bakery, artisan-made bread, hand-rolled dough. We make bread, we deliver it to restaurants all around the county of Los Angeles. But there's really nothing better than two guys breaking down of people's enemies, right? Two rival gang members. There's nothing better than them standing at the bread table, shoulder to shoulder, rolling dough. Because you don't demonize somebody you're in a relationship with, and those guys know they got to be in a relationship to get a certain amount of bread made each and every day.
Absolutely.
That's why we have the businesses like that, and where we deal with gang members, not gangs. So we deal with the individual along the way, and so that business is very important. Not only do we sell our bread to restaurants, but we also go to farmers markets. And one day early in my time at Homeboy, I was walking through the bakery, management by walking around, and I heard one of our best guys who go to farmers markets, our best trainees, we call them, George. And he was really good. Every farmers market he went to, he always sold out his bread. He had a real gift for gab. And he had just gotten out of prison 4 months prior. And so I heard George ask the bakery manager if he can have the weekend off. And, me being kind of new, I wanted to, I went up and I chit-chat and I said, "Hey, George, what's going on?" In a really light kind of tone. And he said, "No, what I'm doing this week is I'm reporting in." And I looked quizzically. I said, "Reporting in? What's that mean?" Well, he came out of prison and he had all sorts of debt. Not only restitution costs, but craziness about our society here. He has court costs, parole officer costs, probation costs. And it's crazy for our society to think that people in prison can be accumulating this debt, and how are they going to pay when they get out? They barely can get a job, one, and make enough money for food and shelter, let alone pay off their debt. Okay, that's the sidebar. But at the time in LA County, if you owed money, you could report into county jail and earn off some of that money that you owed. And so that's what he did. And so when he told me that, I was kind of blown away thinking, wow, that guy's doing it the right way. He didn't go ask his homies and his gang to borrow the money because he would have been indebted. He didn't go steal the money. He's trying to do it the honest way, which what we in society would want someone to do. But boy, reporting to the county jail, man, that's not necessarily a safe thing. So he did that. Okay, so I go home. I'm thinking all weekend about it. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, should I just pull money out of my pocket and give it to him? And all of this was going through my head, but also appreciating what he was doing to sort of do it the right way. So on Tuesday morning, I make a beeline to go see him to see how it went. And so I see George. I said, "George, how'd it go?" And I could see the stress still on his face. And it was on his face. I said, "What happened?" He said, "Well, now when he got out of prison, unusually so, he got custody of his two kids, a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. The caregiver who was supposed to watch his kids while he went to county jail for the weekend couldn't make it. And so he had to leave his 10-year-old and 8-year-old alone in their apartment for 4 days. Now, the kids would end up being fine, but just think about that. The stress of a parent, you're locked up in jail knowing your 10-year-old and 8-year-old's out there. Okay, what do I tell the story for? Because the rest of us in society, we make judgments about, well, did he make the right decision? Should he have borrowed money? Should he have just not shown up? It's like the rest of society, we have to resist the urge to judge people's actions, right? And recognize that some folks, or particularly the working poor in our society, have tremendous stresses in their life that are just impossible choices to make. And so I say that to the point of, look, if we're in corporate America and I want us corporate America to hire the working poor, but recognize people want to do a good job, but there's stuff in their life that causes them to not always be present and give an A+ effort. But it's not because they don't want it, because they have other challenges going on. And so it's really about understanding not judging someone's behavior, but understanding what causes that behavior. And that's a big insight that I think every leader should think about their workforce.
Everybody on their team has a life that they're managing in addition to work.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's right. And I've come to learn everybody, for the most part, we've all had some type of trauma in our life. Now, not as great as the complex trauma our homies go through, but people are pain trauma. And if you don't transform that pain, you're going to transmit it, and transmitting it causes behavioral.
Fascinating. I know you talk about practical ways to address things like that. One part of the book, you mentioned 55 rules to break. Do you have a favorite rule that you'd advise people to break?
Oh, a couple of them. It's 55, but I have a few. Look, what I've learned so much about Homeboy is that we help the individual. Whatever we need to do with that individual to help them with their challenges, that's what we're going to do. So in other words, don't worry about setting precedent. Don't worry about if you're having trouble making your rent payment by the end of the month, and you're choosing between food for your kids or paying rent, we're going to give you the money so you can get your rent paid. Now, the next guy coming in tomorrow, I may not do the same because we know more of their story. We know more of the situation, right? And so if you think about how to help people the most, it's sort of don't worry about setting precedent, sort of be for individuals. Another rule, sort of the break, I want to a little bit talk about diversity. We're very proud of the fact that now 2/3 of our management team are former clients, people with lived experience, massive amount of diversity. And it's really been intentional where we start not just as they were clients, but as their frontline supervisor, and they become manager and director and VP and part of the executive team. And so if all the way along, I could have chosen somebody from outside Homeboy with better skills, better set of experiences, right, than the people inside, because they don't have the formal education, they weren't in the job as long. But in the end of the day, I know our organization is going to be stronger if I have people with lived experience who have walked in the shoes of those gang members to know how
Absolutely.
to do it. I can teach them those skills. So it's about promoting people before they've proven they can do the job, just believing in that they do it, and then providing the resources so they step into it. Which is, corporate America. You first of all, you're trying to, you usually, before you give people a promotion, you tell them to do the job for 6 months, and then you give them the promotion. Our population, they've been promised things all their life. They're not going to do that. You're going to have to sort of get out in front of it. And the other thing is about building diversity at the ground level, and eventually it gets up into all levels of management, as opposed to stealing somebody else's diverse hire.
Absolutely. So I think one question that folks might have, and it occurred to me, have you ever been burned by a guy that you were trying to help or disappointed?
Yeah. Listen, first answer, overall answer is yes, but I want to put more around it. We're dealing with a set of complex problems. So our people have victims of trauma. They join a gang. Their parents never cared for them. Their parents told them not to go to school. The parents jumped them into a gang. They think the gang is their family. False hope. They do some type of crime, go to prison, and then they come out and they're tired of that lifestyle, right? And so we have a really tremendous success rate in our program. A number of years ago, UCLA did an independently funded study that showed people who've been part of the Homeboy program, only 30% recidivism rate after 2 years, meaning going back into the jail system under a new charge. Our 30% compares to a 70% statewide average. And so our method of kinship kindness and giving them a chance works for sure. But there's still 30% that it doesn't work for, because there's still a lot of stressors in people's lives. And there's that tug of them getting back into the gang life. They can't get a job. They can't do this. So it's heartbreaking. I mean, it's searingly heartbreaking, the losses that we've had. And that's what makes the work hard. But also it's the joy when we see when people are become resilient and can leave Homeboy and do better for their family. I mean, that's what makes these that's what makes being part of a nonprofit human services agency so challenging. It's you see the good and you see the bad and how everything plays out.
Absolutely. And you've got 7 out of 10 that are successful and that you're helping turn around their lives.
That's right.
And again, it's the type of folks that a lot of people would shy away from or say, they scare me,
Yeah,
or
no,
I don't
they
want
do,
my
and that's
associate.
what's interesting is our workforce is. Look, I've run lots of businesses in my career in my life. Our workforce is as good as a workforce as you ever could have. I often, I'm still a competitive type of CEO. I often try to think, hey, if there ever was this challenge out there where you and I both have the same business model we had to go run, I'm going to hire my workforce. You can hire anybody you want. I know I'm going to win because I know I know my homeboy workforce. They're loyal. They've never been given a chance. And one of my messages I try to get out to the corporate world is, listen, we need to hire the working poor. Poverty rate in America has been the same for 45 years. Same narrow band, 12%. And no party, no government be able to figure this out. But what's interesting about Homeboy is we've been able to help the most demonized and poor people in our society heal and go get jobs outside of Homeboy and get out of poverty. And so if Homeboy can, I think corporate America can do. So hire the working poor. Next 10% of your hires, hire the working poor and bring some support services around. And that will make a difference in our society.
Absolutely. And alluding to corporate America, the Fortune 200 or the Fortune 100, I think Fortune magazine actually just came out with a ranking of at least it was the 400 most wealthy Americans. Many of them obviously are CEOs.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at corporate America, still very white, very male. A lot of folks feel like it hasn't changed a lot, say, in the last 50 years or forever. Any thoughts on that, how we achieve more diversity in corporate America?
Yeah, I think you look at it's a long game, right? And there's no quick hits there. I think what I've seen at Homeboy over my decade here is investing in people at their frontline manager's job, right? Make sure you have massive diversity at that manager level. And over time, they're going to rise up and rise up. And I think that's the way to do it. And I learned this in my corporate life. Your management team needs to look like your workforce, or your management team needs that same diversity as your customer base. And that takes intentionality. That takes understanding how you're going to not hold this sort of ultra high, I'm going to hire the most qualified candidate. You're going to hire somebody who do the job and invest in them and move it forward. And I think, it's going to take a generation. If everybody does it, take a generation, then the CEOs will all have the amount of diversity we're looking for. So there's no silver bullet there. It just takes sort of a ongoing effort, which I think corporations want to do. It doesn't go against their instincts, for sure, because you're building your own team. Now, if you're a type of company where you think you're always going to steal other people's talent, that's not going to work so well.
Different story.
But if you're in it for the long term where you're building your own team, you'll make it happen.
Absolutely. Where do you see Homeboy in 5 or 10 years? So I know you're based on the West Coast. Have you ever considered replicating in the Midwest, on the East Coast, other places?
Yeah, well, we've considered it and we've said no. But that being said, and if any of your listeners ever come to LA, please come take a tour. We've had lots of organizations come and visit Homeboy and model themselves after how we go about it. And so over the years, we've created a global Homeboy network where now there are over 150 organizations around the country and around the world who've modeled themselves after Homeboy. And so we see this as a model that has sort of people embrace it, and people take what we're about and kind of localize it to their situation, whether it's solving homelessness or at-risk youth or any type of human services organization kind of takes these principles and moves that forward. And so it's a loose affiliation, and it's a little bit of a movement because it's leaning into investing in disenfranchised communities. So we're going to continue that. We also want to keep growing. I want to grow more social enterprises because we're trauma informed. We're a good place to work. Like I keep saying, our folks are as good as any other workforce out there, but yet because of their felonies and their background, they don't get paid as well. And so for me, I want to add more social enterprise businesses that has market-based wages. So we have an electronics recycling company. And so now this is all small businesses, but we're about to open up 3 pet grooming salon shops. There's a dearth of pet grooming shops in LA, so we figure we can pay them $25 an hour plus tips, and that's a good job. So we want people to have more quality jobs as we grow this, so they can kind of make their life dreams come true and do well for their family.
Wonderful. And I'm guessing that our audience, as impressed as I think we all are with the work that you're doing and what you've achieved, there's probably a tinge of jealousy perhaps or envy that you seem to have real meaning in your work. And a lot of people today in corporate are still without meaning. They feel like perhaps they're phoning it in or they just don't really care. Any thoughts about that? Did it take going to nonprofit to truly find meaning?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking that question. I've thought a lot about it, and I kind of write a little more than a little bit about this in my book. Let me say a few things. I feel first off, I feel so blessed. I'm so lucky to have this second chapter of my career. It's just been remarkable to be in this community of people changing their life and very authentic and opening and welcoming me. I've gotten so much out of it for myself, and so I've thought a lot about that. It's like what is different now for me versus my corporate days. I love my corporate job. I love the businesses I ran, and I think it's the realization now of finding joy in really. I've learned that you can read Desmond Tutu and Dalai Lama and our founder Father Greg. You find joy through others, right? And so I say to people, where you work today, it's every day you should wake up and think about joy and finding joy through others, through being in community with others, being in relationship with others. You can still get all your business responsibilities done, but you can also find joy through others. That's the first most important thing. The second is, take a leap of faith. So on the weekends or in the evening, go volunteer at a human services organization. Like I worked 26 years in corporate America thinking I wanted to volunteer, but what does somebody need a business guy? That's what I was thinking. And the answer is yes. They need all sorts of skills.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Look, I didn't come in and they didn't need me to improve the mission of Homeboy of mentoring gang members, right? They needed me to help run the thing and grow it and find the resources. That's as important as the person who's mentoring the homie along the way. And so, but in that, it's like if you let your own airs go down and humble yourself and just being in relationship with people, move yourself to be in relationship with people on the margins of our society, not wagging your finger at them, just being friendly, that goes a long way. So if a hard-charging business guy can do it, then other people can do it too. And just sort of take that leap of going to volunteer and just showing up and maybe not being productive at a nonprofit, but being there helps.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tom, this has been a fascinating discussion. I so appreciate your time, and it's just so impressive what you've accomplished at Homeboy. And I think we can all, even if we're not at Homeboy, we should maybe perhaps strive to find the Homeboy in our life.
Yes, sure.
In other words, somewhere where we can take our corporate skills and put them to use where they're needed by folks that desperately need the help.
Absolutely. That's
Wonderful.
what I wish everybody to do.
Excellent. Tom, thank you. We've been speaking with Tom Vozzo, and the name of the business again is Homeboy, and the book is The Homeboy Way, which I'm assuming is available Amazon and everywhere.
That's correct.
Well, thank you again, Tom. It's been a wonderful discussion. And thank you all to our watchers and listeners. We appreciate you joining us for another episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on Strategy Next, where today's insights ignite tomorrow's possibilities. Subscribe now to never miss a conversation and share this journey with your network. Have ideas or feedback? Reach us anytime at strategynext@jhelmy.co. Join us next time as we explore new horizons in strategy and innovation. Until then, lead boldly and think beyond limits.